Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 6, episode 9. My name is Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. This week I'm talking to Makayla, a misophone who was also recently diagnosed with autism. This is a long one where we talk about misophonia's place in neurodivergent culture, her experience growing up with miso, and now having the language to express to others finally how she feels, her many coping methods, how she focuses on her nervous system, and we end with some thoughts on the kind of empathic superpowers misophones can demonstrate to the world. This is an episode with lots of quotes and great nuggets that just gets better and better as the interview flows on. As always, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or find me on Instagram and Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. If you can, please go and leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to this show. It helps drive us higher in the algorithms, which just helps us reach more misophones. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support as well of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like learning more there, you can read all about it at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. All right, now here's my conversation with Makayla. Makayla, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited, and happy International Day of Peace while we're recording this.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, recording on the 21st of September. Yeah, that's great. Happy International Peace Day. So, yeah, Makayla, do you want to, I guess, tell people, kind of where you are in the international community and kind of what you do?
Yeah, so I'm in Washington State in the San Juan Islands, and so we're the most northern islands in the Puget Sound. And I can see Canada from where I live most days. And so that's fun. Love living here. I live in the woods. I am a neighbor to a donkey. And luckily the donkey does not annoy me, only the barking dogs. But that's a whole other thing. But
Yeah, we'll probably get to that at some point. But
yeah, exactly. But I love living in the woods. It's great. It's a lot of peace. I get to go to a lot of beaches here. And so it is nice living in a more secluded area for those reasons, finding peace and finding our moments of solitude. But it is, it has its quirks for sure. But for what I do, I've been nannying for about 10 years. And so I just work with kids. And
amazing.
It's super great. There's some triggers that come up, but I handle it.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, what is it pretty easy to get a nannying gig there around where you are?
Yes.
Is there a decent population there?
Yes, so there is definitely a decent population of people who stay here year round. And there's just a shortage of caretakers. And so, a lot of people are moving here to start businesses and work and stuff. And so there's a lot of kids who don't have care and are just like, thrown with, oh, this person for this day, or, so I just try and help where I can. But yeah, the triggers are, the more time I spend with a kid, I usually start feeling, that trigger feeling around them, especially with the eating, because they're learning how to eat. And I try to just move around that, or I've been doing it for long enough where I've kind of established some things.
Yeah. By moving around, do you mean like, I don't know, going to another room or heading outside, taking a break, or communicating with the child that maybe they should do something slightly different?
Yeah, so I typically love to do snacks in the car. And because I can turn on my music, I'm focused on driving. They're behind me. I can't see them. So that just avoids all like visual problems. But then, they are behind me. So it is a odd situation, I guess. But I just go with it, I guess, and it works. And then if they are like eating, when I was younger, I used to feed everyone dinner, and then I'd go around the corner in the hallway and just sit on the floor until they were done. And I never said anything. I would just feed them and disappear. And then when they were all done, or if they needed something from the fridge, they'd ask, and I'd get up and get it to them. and just go back to the floor because I
Yeah.
couldn't be in there. It just was too bad. And so I don't know what they thought about that, but I mean, I was with them and would play with them and whatnot. Um, it was just the eating part. I had to go away. And then there was
Makes
some,
sense.
uh, I guess, repetitive sounds or like squeaky sounds that would bother me. And I would just like, okay, let's stop making that sound now, or, distract and, whatever,
Right.
just keep moving on to something new. So, kids are great because they love new things. And so we can distract them easily, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you were talking about the car being kind of a refuge, because usually when I hear about a car mentioned on this podcast, it's like a torture chamber, but it's usually when the misophone's in the back seat, but you're in control of the volume. You're not necessarily looking at the
Exactly.
kid unless you need to look in the rearview mirror. So I can see how that
Exactly.
could be
I think because I
good.
definitely have resonated with a lot of people on the podcast before with the car trauma, because I lived in Oregon growing up and my grandparents lived here. And so up and down I-5, a lot of my childhood. And so cars were a torture chamber for me. And now I'm able to like manage it a little bit better, but it's taken some time for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so did you then did you move here and take this vocation to, escape a life that was a little bit more misophonically incompatible? Is this something you kind of chose on purpose to find that piece specifically for this condition?
No, not at all. I was definitely escaping my life by moving here, but
Yeah,
nothing work related. I just kind of moved here knowing that I could find a job because everyone's hiring pretty much. And so I was like, I'll figure out something. But then kids just always follow me for some reason. And it's kind of funny because of misophonia, because I wouldn't necessarily like my misophonia truest self wouldn't like to be around kids, but my personality and my nature love kids. And so it's really this like double-edged sword, love-hate relationship. And so I just saw a need and I love it.
yeah. Okay, that's great. Um, yeah, that's interesting about San Juan, because a friend of mine who lives in Portland was recently Instagramming pictures of amazing pictures, and I was like, "Where the hell is this?" And it was the San Juan Islands up near, up in Washington. I was like, suddenly looking for real estate, seeing
Yeah,
if
it's
there's
cool. You should come
yeah. So
visit. Seriously, anyone who
definitely want
wants,
to visit. I mean, I actually will be in Seattle soon to
yeah,
visit
you should
family,
come up
so
here.
maybe
Even for the
I'll
day,
try
it's
to.
fun. You just take a little ferry, not a little, it's
Yep,
huge actually. Take a ferry and it's fun. There's fun shops and pretty good food, but uh
we'll have to
it's
do a Misophonia podcast convention in the San Juan Islands one day. We'll just
yes,
get everybody over there.
yes. You can just go to the
Um,
beach and listen to the waves and just relax.
yep, Yep, yep. Oh, sounds amazing. Sounds beautiful. Okay, so yeah, maybe let's back up to I know there's a lot of stuff, and you sent me an email or an Instagram message about some stuff you wanted to talk about, but maybe we should let's back up to something you said earlier about wanting to escape your life. Is that you know how a lot of us I don't know, a lot of us had kind of like some kind of complex trauma early on in our lives. Are we kind of like talking about chaos at home, kind of like
Um,
things that may have
it's kind
or
of everything all at once, but everything
hmm
that you didn't expect is
ah
kind of my situation.
intriguing. Okay,
Yes. So I actually moved here to move out of my parents' house because, it was kind of ending the pandemic, but like we're still in the pandemic. It was kind of that time.
oh yeah,
Um, and of like, oh, it's getting better. And I needed a way. I graduated high school during the pandemic, decided not to go to college because all my plans changed. And I was like, this is not whatever. I'm just going to let it go for now. It's not the right time. And my grandparents have lived here for the past 30 years. And so I was like, I'm just going to go move to the island, take care of grandma. And as soon as I made that decision for myself, my parents also decided to move in with my grandma as well. And
Ah.
so I had gotten my own like tiny house here. And so I was living on the other side of the island, I would check in on her, whatever. But then my parents moved into the house. And so after I was done working on the farm with the tiny house, my parents, we got a trailer for me to move back to the property. And so it was like the perfect storm. My dad needed a job change. My brother and I have always wanted to live here, and we needed to take care of grandma. So it was kind of this, okay, this is what's happening. And now we're here and we love it. And life is certainly not easy. It's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of growth, but we're here and we're glad to be here. But in moving here, this is when I started taking misophonia seriously, because I was living in a tiny house with another human um, that wasn't my family. And so, I explained things before we had moved in, and that was fine. But then as time went on, obviously triggers start popping up. You see a misophonia meltdown, and eyebrows start to get raised of like, are you even normal? And
Yeah.
the
Did you know
answer,
this person beforehand, or
yes, I did. They were a friend,
okay.
and
Yeah.
I felt very comfortable with it. And I was like, we're in the woods, we'll have space, whatever. But inevitably, something happens. But it was truly a blessing in disguise, because they really cared for me and saw how much of distress that I was in, and was able to be like, look, like, go get help, like, go to therapy, do something. They're like, just do something, like, just start. Because I've always been interested in psychology and the way people work. I had just never gotten the opportunity to really do a deep dive on myself. And so that's what I did. And I have learned a lot over the past year.
So okay, so then you at that point you decided to see a therapist, like a professional.
Yes.
Got professional help specifically from misophonia. Okay, and how did you go about that? Was it like a kind of a traditional, licensed therapist, or kind of
Yes.
how did you seek that person out?
Well, there's like private therapists here, but there's also just like one building. It's called Compass Health. And so I just went there and I got lucky.
Mm.
I've had a long history of doctors and therapists and whatever, and we can get into that later. But this time I was like, they're not gonna there's nothing they can do for me. But I had read about um, CBT therapy, cognitive
Mm-hmm.
behavioral therapy, and so I was intrigued. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go. And I got lucky. This woman, she was an intern. She wasn't even getting paid, and she went total nerd on misophonia and wanted to learn everything she could. And the irony is, what she was deaf, and so she had hearing aids. And so she was able to sympathize with me in a way that no one else had before. And she was like, we are the opposite. And that's okay, but I can understand what you're feeling still. And so it was a beautiful experience. And every week she taught me something new. Um, and I tried to implement into my life. And so it's been such a growing year.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's. I mean, yeah, you're right. They're kind of opposite in some ways, but kind of able to sympathize
Yeah.
because it's a debilitating auditory phenomena disorder. So
No,
what did so how did that start then? She obviously didn't know what misophonia was early on, and what are some of the things that she worked with you on?
so first, getting to for her to get to know misophonia, I just gave her kind of my life story and just like
Yeah,
everything that happened, everything I suspected misophonia could be related to, because it's for me it is so intersectional in so many areas of my life and traumas and
that's what people don't
family.
understand. That well, non-misophones don't understand is that it's not just being annoyed with sound. Sorry to cut in, but it's this is
It's
interesting. It's
so
yeah,
much.
it is very intersectional. It's so many different dimensions and layers. So
Exactly.
yeah,
And so I just told her, I was like, I'm not going to talk about sounds this whole time because all of these facts matter. I was like, I feel that to my core. And she just listened. And then from there, we talked. She was like, okay, so what are your issues right now? And before we had gotten the trailer on our property for me, I was sleeping on our couch. And so I had no room in the inn. And our house is a loft. And so every night I could hear my mom snore. And that was a beautiful time in my life, just great. Getting no sleep and being triggered all night.
Yeah.
And so we really focused on my current issues of that time because everything in my life had changed to where all the coping skills that I had as a child growing up in my childhood home were out the door. I was in a completely new space, completely new town, new dynamic with my grandma. And so we just started from zero from where I was and what I was going through. And so the major things that we worked on were being triggered and leaving the situation, or having the agency to leave the situation, because all my life I was in freeze mode pretty much. When it came to being triggered, I was in fight or flight in other areas of my life, but when it came to misophonia, I just froze because
And just shut down.
I just shut down. And so she was like, you can leave. And I was like, I know that, but I need to actually start doing that. And so then I started leaving when I was triggered. But the thing is I would leave in a very chaotic way. Not dramatic, like when I was a teenager, like stomping up the stairs. But I was like a cartoon character almost, like running through the kitchen, like, don't start eating, like, I'm gonna go now. And so it was just like very chaotic for me, and it didn't feel very peaceful and fluid. And so we just kind of talked and walked through that, and how I can just like take a deep breath and be like, thank you for spending time with me. I love this conversation. I'm gonna go now. Now, luckily, my family is amazing and will tell me like, hey, I'm making a sandwich. I'm gonna be upstairs in a few minutes. Just so you know, like, you need to wrap up your conversation pretty much, because they know I'm going to leave anyways. And so it's been a learning experience, but we really worked on like how to leave like a normal human, I guess. Like leave nicely. And then it also helped me just get to a place where I could make accommodations for myself. And I didn't have to just sit there and suffer and think that I was crazy and have these intrusive thoughts, but that I could be like, okay, there's a trigger happening right now. I can do something about it. I can pay attention to my breath if that's what I need to do in this situation. I can walk away. I can put in earbuds, all the little techniques and tools that we can have. I just was like, I'm actually going to use them now. And so it was very empowering to be able to put in my head plugs or earplugs and just feel calm for once. Like, that was amazing feeling.
Yeah, that's great. Getting you working you to get out of the freeze situation. And in the situation where you were hearing your mom sleeping, was like earplugs the solution there to kind of like make that go away, or I'm curious how you managed to get over that.
Yeah, so just from like baseline, I am a pillow over my head sleeper. And I genuinely feel like that is misophonia related. Like, how could it not be? I don't think my neck likes it at all. I think it's all my ears. And so I think that's funny. So I would do that, but then I could obviously still hear. And so then I just kept adding things. And so I got like a headband with Bluetooth speakers in them that I could lay down on. And so I would just play like chakra music or brown noise all night. And it would lull me to sleep, and it was great. And then if I did wake up in the middle of the night and that was off of my head, because it would slip off sometimes, and I could hear her, that's when it got tricky, because the house was so quiet that I could still like hear her almost, or even the music, I thought that I was hearing her. It was definitely a mind thing. And so then just to calm my mind, I'd put earplugs in and then the a sound band, and that would, get me back to sleep. But there were also nights where I would just like sit on the deck outside like and just
Yeah.
look at the stars or something because I was just like I can't be in there. I just can't be in that space.
And how is it now then? Overall, like living and sleeping in your
Yeah,
house with your family?
it's good. So now I have my own trailer, and so I do have my own space, and I
Mm,
have had to make some accommodations with that, but it's pretty good. Our family obviously with me doesn't like eat together, even just them in general. They just, my brother has soccer, parents want to eat when they want. And so we've just kind of thrown that tradition out the window.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's
It's usually the first thing that goes.
exactly. And so eating is kind of, I just try to avoid it. And if someone is about to eat, they just kind of tell me and then I maneuver myself away. Um, but we are still able to spend time together, and um, but but everyone in my family does have their own trigger to me, and
Mm.
so it's all different, but it's all the same feeling that happens, and so
Do they all help to accommodate you? Is there anyone in your family who's kind of not really into it?
um so I mean I've had a misophonia for 11 years now, so
Mhm.
when I say this I want to emphasize that it has taken this long to get to this place where we are.
Yeah, yeah.
But everyone has been very accommodating. Not, I wouldn't say accommodating at first, but aware of what I'm going through. And it took them a long time to realize how real this was for me and how intense it was for me. But once we got to that place, they have been incredible. And we still have like plastic bowls. We do have ceramic ones, but just in case I'm there, someone uses
Mhm.
the plastic, and then we have bamboo spoons and forks and knives. And so and then, what else have they done? I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's just communication at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and then,
Yeah, that's often what it is. It's like I think our minds, our lizard brains, like if they can, if somebody's at least aware and making some effort, then our brain unassigns the threat that
exactly,
we would have normally assigned to them. So that helps a lot.
exactly. And that's what's been really helpful for me, at least, is just identifying it, whether that's in my brain out loud or even someone else. And just saying, like, hey, I need to finish my cracker or something. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Like, and it's weird because you sound crazy and you sound like you're controlling what they're eating, but it's a brain thing. Like, you just can't explain it. And
Hmm.
yeah, but everyone's been really good and really kind, but I also don't spend like a ton of time with my family. It's not like I see them all the time and hanging out with them all day. Like, it's very brief, and we connect, but then we go our own separate ways and do our own thing. So I think just that rhythm has also helped.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I kind of ask, how has, I'm sure this will come up also later, but if and how has misophonia affected your relationship with your family? Causing some people are completely ostracized from an early age, which is really sad. It sounds
It
like
is
you
heartbreaking.
guys have created some kind of a balance. Yeah, I know. It sounds like you guys have created some kind of a balance where they're very accommodating, or at least are aware and try to be. But it's not like you spend all day right next to each other. There-
Yeah, exactly.
there's a balance that has evolved. That's probably the best we can hope for.
Yeah,
Do you want to maybe go back to kind of the early days for you and kind of when you started noticing this and how it evolved?
I have now been diagnosed with autism, and so there have been things in my childhood that were like I was familiar with the triggering feeling when misophonia came into the picture. I was familiar with that, something feels off. And so
Mm.
there are sensitivities that I had as a child that, were throughout my childhood. But then when misophonia happened, that's when whoa, this is something real for real. Like this is another level of crazy. And I use crazy. I know some people don't like that word, but I'm like, it's spicy. Like I'm interesting. Like you don't have
Hmm.
you're you don't have a brain like me. And so I mean it in a very endearing way. But yeah, so there was some sensitivities, and one being I listened to last week's episode as we are recording this, and it was Robert, and he was triggered by his mother's voice. And it
Yeah.
triggered a memory of mine, and I was very uncomfortable around my one of my grandmas. And she has a very high pitched voice, and one of the highest pitched voice I've ever heard. And so apparently that was the thing. I was like 2, and so I don't remember it. I just remember being told like, yeah, you didn't really like grandma when you were a kid. And so that raises a red flag in my mind, being like, that was definitely related. But then it wasn't until I was 9 that misophonia just plopped in my life and has never left. And I was just eating waffles with my brother one morning. That's all it was. And he was just smacking his food. That's all. And I just had that enraging feeling and, you know, intrusive thoughts at the ripe age of 9.
Hmm.
And I asked him to stop, and my dad said, if you have a problem with it, you can go to the other room. And I have since talked to him about that. And I was like, Dad, it sounds like something you would say. Like, is my memory right? And he was like, yeah, that's definitely what I said, because I'm teaching you, if you don't like something, that you have the power to move out of that situation. And so in that moment, he was really trying to he didn't know what was going on, obviously, but he was trying to empower me to walk away from bad situations. But
Right.
in turn, what that what what he said taught me was no one else is feeling like this, and now I it's all me. This is my problem that I have to deal with and I have to walk away with. And
Right.
so I don't, I'm obviously don't have any grudges towards him and what he said, because he was just being a parent, absolutely doing what he trying his best. That's what I'm trying to say. Just
Yeah.
trying his best. And so um but it's interesting to think, because I remember that moment so specifically, that it's like I just remember being like, oh, so now it's my problem, like no one else is hearing what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it was kind of like a switch that morning where uh, this is probably not the first time were being eaten in the house, but
Absolutely
something
not.
about that. Yeah, something about that day. Was there anything going on around your life around that time that you know that was, I don't know, different or changing?
Yes, but here's where the it's been 11 years and trauma makes your mind like scrambled eggs. And so I
Yeah.
don't know what came before or after, but during that time, my grandparents living in the San Juan Islands had a house fire. And unrelated to the house fire, my grandfather was in the hospital for
Mm.
about a year. He had an infected hip. And so that happened when I was 9, but I don't know which happened first. And so,
Gotcha.
I know the house fire was in January when I was 9, but I don't know I don't know where it lands on the on the timeline, which is frustrating to me because I want to have that timeline accurate, but some things we just won't have the answers to.
Yeah, so you don't remember what day that was where you're eating the waffles.
No, I
And
wish I
so
had like marked it on
it's
my
hard to tell,
calendar.
yeah.
Like I felt crazy this morning or something. Like or like a journal or something. I just wish there was some evidence because I'm just so curious, honestly.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's yeah, it's interesting because yeah, it's I've heard multiple people say there was a grandparent passed away, and then they noticed misophonia at the funeral, and that was and then
Oh,
from that point on
wow.
it was game over. And so
Wow.
a grandparent that they were close to, and so
Yeah,
multiple
that
people,
makes sense.
and
Like to
and
me that
and it's
totally
kind of
makes sense.
eerily, yeah.
The
Hmm.
trauma and the sensitivity, like it goes together. I don't know how, but if you're a researcher, it goes together. I'm just telling you. This is what my
Yes.
nervous system is telling you.
Yeah. So then how okay, so yeah, then after that day, obviously you were probably starting to get triggered by more things. It's You said earlier that everyone in your family has their trigger. How did it kind of evolve? Did it just kind of like snowball pretty quickly?
So it was I think I have kind of an interesting story, and it's interesting because I feel like my story resonates with so many people that I've listened to. And so after that incident, then when I was 10, my family decided to move. And so we moved to a town where we didn't have a house, but we had friends. And so our friends invited them into their home. They are lovely. I'm still friends with them to this day. I don't know how, but it was 9 people in one house with my family being
Ooh,
in one bedroom.
yeah.
And so you have stomping,
Oi.
have all the meals, snoring, and etc., etc. I don't want to list everything, but that's just the main ones that I'll say. And so that was a very intense 6 months for me. I definitely disassociated. I don't even like from misophonia, like the 9, 10, 11, 12 age, I genuinely don't remember a lot. I think I disassociated from myself, and then so we got through like living with them, and then once we moved into our own home and I got my own room, I was so excited. I instantly fell into a very deep depression as a 6th grader or 5th grader or whatever. And that was really scary because I didn't know what was happening, and I was pretty sure it was depression because it's run in my family. I've been exposed to it, but it was like I don't know what to do. Like, what's happening? And I'm suffering. And then I go to school and I'm tired and I'm annoyed and, just all the things. Like, I know I don't have to explain everything thoroughly to you guys because everyone gets it to some extent.
Yeah. So okay. So it was after that, your whole family in the room. So these were all kind of like stemming. I mean, seems like stemming from misophonia, or did you have the autism? And we were talking earlier about kind of intersectional issues with you. Do you know kind of, was there a timeline or cause and effect of how this kind of how this
Well,
all happened? Do you feel like misophonia is kind of the root of a lot of this?
um, that's what's kind of confusing to me. And I'm like fairly newly diagnosed with
Yeah.
autism. But with autism, you can't develop it. You're born with it. And misophonia, you develop it, but it's also in your DNA. So, like, it's kind of that gray area. We don't know. But autism to me feels it's just like who I am and what I do and how I think. Misophonia feels like it's another entity that is so deep in the core of who I am, and it like just comes out from time to time.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah.
the depths of how I feel it are like very at my core.
Gotcha. So autism is it's kind of something you're born with, but more kind of your baseline. I think autism is considered more of a trait, right, rather than like a disorder. I believe is how
I
kind of it's
hope so.
defined. Yeah, but
I
misophonia is more of a
It's pretty much just a
obviously
brain type. Oh, sorry, I
yeah.
interrupted.
No. Yeah, misophonia. Like I think you were saying earlier, is yeah very much a a deep thing that comes out like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation when you're
Yes.
triggered.
Yes.
Um, and so and then the dissociation that was happening again, that was really a result of kind of that intense, almost claustrophobic environment that you were in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like,
And,
100%. I just couldn't deal with it, I guess.
and so a part of that is that when dissociation is also kind of like maybe synonymous with the freeze reaction that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Cause I never said anything to anyone, like, up until I don't know when exactly I said or someone noticed what was happening. Like, I that's the other part that I don't remember is, like, when I actually said something or if my parents noticed I was being triggered and realized, like, the connection. I don't know
Yeah.
when that was. It eventually happened, thank God, but,
Yeah.
it wasn't for a while, and so I was just very, like, just in my body, frozen, shameful, guilty, afraid, like, as a nine-year-old
What were you
girl,
what were you
what?
afraid of? Was it just afraid of being triggered?
I don't even know
Yeah.
what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. Yeah.
just a feeling in my body that I could not get
Mhm.
away from.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and you brought up shame and guilt. I mean, obviously, pretty much every episode talks that comes up at some point. Was that the shame and guilt of like not understanding why you are not wanting to interact with your parents, or just feeling like you're a burden? That kind of shame and guilt that
I
we all have.
I think it's all above and more. Like, I was also raised in a Christian household, and in Christianity, shame and guilt is not taught, but heavily applied, and so I think I was, like, more susceptible to shame and guilt to begin with my upbringing, and then you add misophonia to it, and, you
Yeah.
have intrusive thoughts about hurting your loved ones, and
Yeah.
you feel bad, and then you react, and then you either get in trouble for your reaction, and that's, causes more trauma, or and you, or you just feel like a burden. Yeah, it's just like it's truly a vicious cycle. And
Yeah.
until you are aware of it and have agency and have language, like language, hello, we need to talk about that. Having the language to describe what is going on and how sensitive we are. And because this podcast has taught me so many words and like how to explain misophonia to people. And like people on the podcast have come on and said things like really I don't even know what they've said, but just really like put together sentences that only misophones would know. And
Yeah.
I just like
Right.
felt it in my gut, like that's what I've been feeling. Okay, that was just
Yeah.
another way to explain it. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it all just piled on top.
And then how did you, it sounds like a deep hole that you went into, or what kind of like helped you crawl out? Was it something you did, or something your family recognized, or maybe at school?
I think it was kind of a time thing. Um my I think again, a lot was going on. I have, you know, again, very loving parents and a fairly healthy household, and I'm very blessed and very grateful for that. But there were definitely things, and so in that time, I was also, going to church as a family, and at that age is also the time where I started being triggered at church, which got really dangerous. Um, and that adds to the shame and guilt, because I think being triggered in a place that is supposed to be sacred is really damaging for your psyche. Like not physically, like, you know, as far as misophonia goes, but it was really damaging to my psyche because, you know, I'm taught about the fruits of the spirit and all these things, all these good things that I'm supposed to be. And I know that my true nature can be, but I'm sitting there hearing my father breathe next to me and I just want to kill him. Like, that's all I could think about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in church, and they're saying, you know, like, repent, like, Jesus loves you, like, you don't need to feel bad, like, you can just, Jesus will forgive you, and, you know, all these things. And I'm literally thinking about murdering my father right next to me in front
Yeah.
of everyone. You know, like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like crazy in my head. And so it was just like, for a while, or at one point, I definitely thought that I was the devil himself, and was like, yep, because everything that I was taught about from the pulpit about the devil, I was experiencing. And there was no love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness inside my heart, and especially self-control. Like, hello. Like, there was just none of that at that time. I was just suffering so bad that I was like, okay, well, then if I'm not that, then I'm the devil. And he's seeped his little claws into my head, and I'm just gonna be this way. I'm just gonna be miserable. And so I think, you know, but it's hard because I was 12, and so it's kind of like I was also going through that like puberty stage, so it was just all over the place all the time.
Right. Did your yeah, no, it's funny when you were saying that. It's like you know, I'll watch you know, horror movies like The Exorcist or The Omen, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, there's nothing new here. That's kind of what I think about sometimes.
Yeah, it's very haunting. No, this condition is very haunting. I think that is a great word. It just
Yeah.
feels like a little horror like snippet in your brain just for a little, and then it goes away. But it's just whoop, there we go.
Yeah, and before, actually, yeah, before we move on to you know, so what was going on in high school? You talked about the need for language. What are maybe some of the you know, uh, language pieces that have been valuable for you as you've
Um,
explained misophonia?
well, and okay, so I would like to preface before this that I'm not a big language geek. And so I kind of use language very freely. And
Yeah.
if it resonates, it resonates. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And if you have a different definition, then whatever. Like, I don't care. I'm just using language that works for me. So, like, the word sound sensitivity has really helped me explain to other people. Is it the right medical term for us? No, but it has helped me at least explain to other people, because the word misophonia is so weird and people think that you're speaking a different language, not even from Earth. Like, when we
Yeah, I've
say
heard
that word.
people think we're saying phobia, you know.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not that. It's not that. And then a great one is just the word overstimulated. And I know it's
Mhm.
super simple, but just like, I'm feeling overstimulated right now. And it has allowed me to realize that feeling of, oh, I'm about to be triggered, or a trigger is about to happen, or I am triggered, I am overstimulated, or whatever. And so I probably have plenty more. I just am not thinking of them right now. But
Oh no, that's fine if you think of them along the way. Yeah, I'd just be curious as we're talking,
I think,
because I'm sure people are curious about how to
yeah,
explain it to others.
yeah. But I think the neurodivergent world and language has taught me a lot about how to understand misophonia more, which I think is really interesting because misophonia hasn't been researched as much. Um, Having more like neurodivergent friends and you know, people with autism, ADHD, whatever it may be, they somehow seem more understanding and welcoming to misophonia and are able to sympathize with me more, and it's really interesting. Um
Yeah, so I
So
was going to ask then next, like, yeah, after, yeah, as you're growing up and heading into high school, how did your situation with friends? Were you seeking out neurodivergent friends? Did you have any issues making friends?
um I was, the plot continues, and I was still all over the place. Um
Yeah.
I I had a lot of friends actually, but I didn't have like a particular friend group. And so at lunch for school, I would, have put my lunchbox somewhere, but I would walk around the cafeteria and talk to different
Uh,
people. And so I'm very chatty. I'm very sociable. I love talking to people. It's like, it's kind of, I guess, in terms of the fight, flight, or freeze, I feel more like my personality is like, or the fight part is more like, uh we're just going to go talk to people, and we're just going to distract our mind, and we're going to get hyper, and we're going to be
mm,
engaged, and just like like extra, like almost manic but not, I guess. And
gotcha.
so
Yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah.
kind of my fight, is I would just walk around, be hyper, talk to people. Oh, you're eating a cracker now, I'm going to go to this new table. And and I was just all over the place, and people would say like, sit down, enjoy, like chill, and I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, even with families, will more likely to walk around because we can more quickly move
Yeah.
out of a situation.
But
Um,
then the other thing with my high school experience that is weird is that I actually never went to high school. Um, and so that's an interesting aspect. Our Where I used to live, which was in the Tacoma area, our ninth graders were in the junior high. And
mm,
so I went to ninth grade all year. And then after that was the end of that year, I just woke up with a headache one morning, and I just felt in my gut it was serious and it wasn't going to go away, and it really scared me. And so I went to I you know went to the doctor and told them, like, I have misophonia. I feel like this is something related to it. I have been going to school. I feel very fatigued and tired and all these things. And they just gave me muscle relaxer and said I'd be okay. I had a headache for 2 years after that, and
wow.
misophonia definitely did not get better. And so I pretty much dropped out of school at that point. I did online.
Hmm.
And so, I had a bunch of friends, went to school, and then I just disappeared. Like, absolutely disappeared. I would see people in town sometimes, and they'd be like, "Where have you been?" Like, "I almost forgot about you," type of thing. And I'm like, "It's
Wow.
okay. Like, I don't want to talk to any of you because I am in so much pain." But,
Yeah.
like, I didn't care if people forgot about me. I just had no care in the world. And high school just sounded like a war zone to me. Like the lights, the clicking talk, the clock, the people, the gum, everything. I just couldn't. And and so ultimately what I've learned now is I think I was having a um oh wait, oh sorry, I'm forgetting the word. Oh, I totally lost the word.
No
Whatever.
worries. No worries. Yeah, yeah.
But pretty much my brain was just tired from being around all those people for so long and not having any accommodations.
Yeah. Oh, so
So
did you ever try to get accommodations at school?
never, it was never even a consideration of mine. I
Did
just
you did you
got
know what the term was? Well, obviously you knew that you had some sound sensitivities, but was it maybe wrapped just like a lot of us, we don't even think about it because we think we're crazy, or
yeah.
and
So
so
I did have the word. I knew of the word like when I was 14. So it was like a year before head pain kind of started. And I actually, in my ninth grade year, I did have a teacher that said, "No gum, I have this thing called misophonia." And I walked my little butt up to her desk after
the
class, and
teachers
I said,
had misophonia.
"Yeah." Yeah. And I said,
Wow.
I have misophonia too. And she was like, oh my goodness. And she was like, whatever you need, just let me know. And so in her class, you know, like I would cover my eyes because the lights were too bright, and I would plug
Yeah.
my ears because I could hear the clock or someone chewing or something. And that's the thing with me, is that my triggers expand outside of misophonia. It's not just eating, it also is the clock, it's the lights, it's the washing machine, it's the water pressure, it's the dogs. It's so
So
many more things.
it's auditory. There's also, yeah, I was going to ask misokinesia. You get the visual triggers, but
Yeah.
by
Only
washing
one.
machine, only one. What do you
Only
mean?
one. This is so interesting to me. I only have one, like, I can get visually triggered if I'm like watching someone eat from far away. But I don't really count that as like a specific visual trigger. That's just my eyeballs working and then my brain interpreting it. But my trigger is my mom spins her ankles around in circles for like a long time. And I've
Yeah,
never seen anyone do it before. But like she just like rolls her ankles. And it bothers me so bad that I would just be like, "Mom, stop." And she's like, "What am I doing?" I'm like, "Your ankles." And it
you're
was
being
just,
evil. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And even sometimes like the way she sits with her ankles, it just makes me uncomfortable looking
Mm-hmm.
at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, "Can you move your feet in a better position for me, please?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like really weird. And that's where I feel like a bitch sometimes, or a control freak, or like, just this crazy person, because I'm like, you need to sit differently for me to feel better. But I'm completely across the room, and I'm probably going to leave in 3 minutes because someone's going to get out food. So it's like, I just feel like I've had friends come into, my family space, and they've said like, do you realize how much your family moves around you, and you only? Like they don't consider each other as much as they consider you. Like they're trying to be so cautious. And that's where a lot of guilt comes in, because I'm like, I know they're doing so much and I'm still feel triggered in some moments, but at least they're doing something. Like, I'm so thankful, because I know I'm like extremely fortunate in that way, because it's just heartbreaking hearing like people who have been disowned or estranged, and like, just know that there are people out there who will respect us and will respect our needs, because they exist. They just exist, and you just got to put that energy out into the world, that they will find you and you will find them.
Yeah, they exist. Is just it's worth it's worth highlighting this because there's a bunch of, speaking of intersectional, there's a bunch of things here. First of all, I think a lot of people tend to, who don't have this fun, tend to think that we don't realize that we are um, probably a burden and that we have all this guilt. They
Right.
they see our demands and they think that we're just being control freaks when there's a lot more going on. Another thing is, we would, I would think that you and I would, if somebody else had a condition like this, we would accommodate for them as well. I mean, misophonia is just considered, it's not as popular as some of the other issues that a lot of people give accommodations for. And so we're just kind of early in the curve, I think, early in the arc. And hopefully, we will be taken as seriously as these other conditions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being taken seriously is like a huge thing. And that's something that I've grown a lot in. I used to be very ashamed and like feel guilty for telling someone that I have misophonia. But since moving to a new place and just being like, this is who I am, and I know this is not for everyone, this is just what I'm doing. And if you like it, then use it. And if you don't, who cares? Um, but I just tell people I have misophonia. Like, if I hang out with them for the first time or whatever, I just say, hey, I have a neurological condition. It's called misophonia. You can eat with me, but please, like, be cautious. Please don't eat gum. Please, and I just, like, I put it out there, because I don't want anyone to be surprised 6 months into a friendship and then be like, oh my God, I have to act completely different around you. Because in my experience, and I know this might not be scientifically true, but in my experience, to the point, like, I can be friends with someone or be in a relationship with someone, and I know when I start to love them because that's when I feel triggered. As soon as something like, oh my gosh, I really do love them, like, love this person and I want them in my life forever, that's when a trigger comes up. It's so weird.
Interesting. So you mean you tell them that you love them and then the triggers start, or it's like you can tell that you're having
It's
feelings for them because
it's
you're now
kind
starting
of
to get
like,
triggered?
again, it's kind of that complicated, like, I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
in the past if it was like I made the decision, like, wow, I truly do love this person, and then they started triggering me, or they started triggering me and then I was like, wow, I do really love this person. I'm not sure which, because there's been a few instances, but it's definitely very similar timing. And I think it's kind of scary. So that's why I
Yeah,
just like let people know.
right, right. Okay, okay. No, yeah. It's always. I mean, the more this gets out there, the more it's communicated. I think the more normalized it could be. Um, and
But
so,
I guess I'm also like I'm not 21 yet. I'm not like going to bars or partying and, COVID. So I'm not making a ton of friends to begin with here. I
yeah,
live on an island. There's not that many people. And so it's very selective. Like I'm very selective with my friends in general. So when I do hang out with them, that means that okay, they're a safe person I can tell that I have misophonia to.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it kind of goes together. It's not like I'm just like, "Oh my god, I have misophonia. Everyone should know." Like, that's just not gonna
Right,
work.
right. Right. You have right, you announce it from across the bay or wherever, the beach. Uh, so okay, so you're yeah, so let's see. Actually, we're getting to about to an hour, but there's so much I guess we could talk about. But let's I don't know, let's maybe I mean we're at we're kind of around high school, so it's not that many more years left
Yeah,
until we get to the
shouldn't.
present. But I guess do you want to maybe talk about yeah, so well, I guess what have you done? I guess since you graduated online from high school, um, how did things kind of evolve? Like, were you I mean, were you seeing doctors and therapists for other conditions like autism, or
Yes.
other issues? And kind of curious how the dance with between that and misophonia um, landed. And I'm actually not sure when you said that you found your current doctor. I think that was like just about a year ago.
Yeah, so
Okay.
through that time, I was experiencing extreme headaches. Not just a headache that would
Yeah,
come and
right.
go, not a migraine, but a just complete head pain that I would wake up with and I would go to sleep with. It was constant. And I still
Wow.
to this day, I don't know what it stemmed from. I don't know how it went away. I don't know anything. It just was
But
there.
it did go away
It
at
did.
some point
But I do
mysteriously.
have frequent headaches now. Like I end each night pretty much with an ice pack on my head, which I'm fine with. But, you know, at least it's
Well,
not all day.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm
Well,
able to
hopefully
actually,
that'll go. Hopefully that'll go away
yeah,
eventually.
yeah.
Uh,
So I was I, went to that initial doctor. They gave me muscle relaxer, which is completely irresponsible to give a 15-year-old person with just a headache who said she has a neurological condition, just muscle relaxers. I just cannot believe that happened. And I know there's a lot of worse things that doctors have done, but I'm just like, dude, I literally was trying to do my best and communicate with you, but you could not do the same. But,
yeah,
we
yeah.
all understand that doctors are just not going to listen to us. So after that, I went to a naturopath, and because I was just like, this is the doctors aren't going to help me. I just had this feeling. I also switched my diet completely that summer between school years. I went gluten-free and then I went completely vegan. And then I started going to the naturopath, and he had me cut out soy, sugar, corn, and some other things. And so I was completely whole food, plant based diet for about a year as well. And so I did a lot in that time. I was taking supplements, I was doing acupuncture, massage, um, eating good, like going on walks, making sure I was, being careful with that. And nothing was working. It just nothing was
Uh,
working. And we got my blood tested. I got an MRI done. There was a lot. Checked my thyroid, like all these things. I don't even
yeah.
remember. Um, I think I'm saying them all, but there's probably more. Um, but just not. I was just always coming up normal, average human. And a lot of my autistic traits went under the radar as well, mostly because of masking. And uh, typically women are really good at masking and just like a chameleon almost. Like we look at other people in a situation and we're like, oh, that's what everyone sees as normal. Okay, that's what I'm going to do too. So a lot of my personality wasn't shown to people around me, only like I got to see that. And so all like pretty much everything about me, just like the true me, just flew under the radar. And so it's really frustrating to like look back at that time, because I feel like, or I wish that I could have been more, one, honest with myself, but then honest with those around me. And so it is quite frustrating to think like I was in so much pain for so long and did all these things and spent so much money, my own money too. Like I was babysitting at this time, like paying for my naturopath as a 15-year-old.
Wow.
And because I knew that I was like, I knew I needed to get some help. I knew I needed help in some way. I just didn't know what. And so it just felt very disappointing, like every time going to a doctor trying to figure out what's wrong with you, especially when you're in chronic pain, having anxiety, in depression, like and then every time you leave, someone's like, yeah, you're fine. I'm like, I'm not fine. I am light years away from fine right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, and then, yeah,
But
well, I
since
guess, yeah, since then, yeah, how
then,
you got to today, like,
on a lighter note,
yeah.
yes, that was like the big dumpster fire of pain and growing up. But then here, moving to the San Juan Islands and
Hmm.
being in the woods and just saying, okay, Makayla, like there is something wrong with you, and you need to understand that, and you need to recognize that. And so, one, just like recognizing I needed help, recognizing I did have a problem, and then allowing myself to nurture that side of me. And to say, instead of being ashamed of, because this is, and again, doctors have also suspected that I could be bipolar or have multiple personalities. Again,
Mm.
that's where misophonia is very confusing, because it just is confusing. And because how I've explained misophonia to people is like, it's another part of my brain. It's like another person in me. It's like has another voice almost. And I don't know if other people like relate to that at all, but I had to nurture that person, that being or whatever inside of me that was misophonia, and say, okay, I will walk away for you now. I will put in earplugs. I will ask someone to stop. I will make accommodations for myself because I deserve it. My nervous system deserves it. And I feel so much better after doing that and just allowing myself to nurture misophonia and not to hate it, not to be mad at it. I do hate it and I do am mad at it a lot, but in the overall sense of going, okay, this isn't like the devil inside of me now. This is something I need to take care of and say, I love you, even though you caused me pain. I love you because who knows? Maybe misophonia is protecting us from something else. I have no idea. Like,
Yeah, so
no.
a lot of stuff to unpack there, but you're absolutely right, and this is actually one of the aspects of misophonia therapy that I've learned over the last even less than a year. that there is a direct kind of a therapeutic direction which is based on, and I'm not a doctor, but it is, but professionals talk about this. It's based on the idea that misophonia is related to some wounded inner child, something that may have happened, or a series of things that may have happened, not necessarily like big traumatic, like giant traumatic things, but minor traumatic things that may
Multi-traumas.
have happened early on. Yeah, exactly. And there's a wounded child that was not supported, and it takes maybe your older self to talk to it, to give it compassion as a way to kind of get over that, and or at least help a little bit. So I think it's interesting that you've kind of come to that conclusion yourself. And but
Exactly.
I'm
And I feel everything that you just said, like in my core, because again, this is something that developed. So that means something had to have happened to make this a thing in my brain. And so it's like, and I know there's been a lot that has happened in my life that is weird and confusing and complex. And so, and everyone needs to do that inner work and inner self love. But I think for us, it's on such an extreme level of like, because we feel stuff so intensely, it's like, oh no, I don't just like need a self love day. I need to actually love myself, because if I don't, the possibility of me being suicidal is very high. Like, if I don't
mhm.
fully just love and care for myself every single day, that means I could slip into something deeper and darker than even misophonia. And so like it's very real. And so yeah, like coping and all this language and the, whether it's big T trauma, small T trauma, like work through it, face your demons, face the bad shit that happened. And not that it's a cure for misophonia, but it might just help in general.
Oh, I think it absolutely will. Yeah, yeah, great advice. Everything you just said. I hope people um, rewind a bit and listen to it again. You're absolutely right. Um,
Well,
and
and I think, sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm so
no,
bad
no,
at interrupting. It's like really bad. Sorry. Um, but the other thing that has helped me with with like diving deeper into misophonia and coping strategies, instead of, oh, how, because like, yes, there are researchers researching misophonia and a cure, and like, please keep going, keep doing that. We love you. Thank you. Like, seriously, that's amazing. But where my brain's at right now is, what do we do in the meantime when there is no cure and we're still suffering? And so what I did was, instead of like misophonia, like eating all this, I tried to change my focus to my nervous system. And that's when stuff really started clicking for me, where I was like, oh, it's not just my ears, it's not just my reaction. This is my entire body. Like, this is affecting my entire body. My, like my neck is tense, my hips hurt. I have a lot of like weird, like just bodily, not even bodily issues, but just like aches and pains. Like, I feel like I'm
mhm.
70 but I'm 20. And so I'm just like, all of this has something to do with each other. And so once I started focusing on my nervous system, that's when things really were like, oh, I can do this. Like, I am a better human than how I've been acting in the past. Like, this is working. And so one of those things is, CBT obviously helped me like talk things through, but I know that's not for everyone. And then tapping, emotional freedom technique, has changed the game incredibly. Have you ever heard of it? I'm
I
curious.
have, but I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to hear your take on it, and what you do.
I was shocked. And my therapist like just told me about it one day, and I was like, that's interesting, because I've been meditating for 5 years,
Uh-huh,
off and
uh-huh.
on. It wasn't like everyday thing, but I thought that at the time that could help. Obviously didn't. If not, made meditating even harder, because I would, hear my brother playing guitar and I'm like, shut up. And so it was that meditating was hard. So tapping, once I found that, I was like, it's very similar to meditating, but you just hit certain pressure points on your hands and your head, your chest, and then you talk things through. And so, like, for example, you could say, even though I'm feeling triggered, I can still walk away. Even though I'm about to go into a loud, stimulating environment, I will be okay at the end and I can get through this. And you can say anything, like literally anything you want, and just tap it out. Please look it up. It's awesome. And I just
Yeah.
feel better. It's just very empowering. And I even did like a tapping before this and just like, you can do this. You know what to say. This is your life. Like, you don't have to prepare anything. This is your life. You just get to share your story. And I just tapped it out and I felt so much better. And
So how and does the professional have to kind of work with you to talk about where to tap and or what to say,
just
or
look
is
it
it
up on
something you
YouTube.
can? Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, okay.
YouTube. Just look it up on, there's like an Instagram account, there's a YouTube, there's, just like good old Google. And yeah, you can
No, it's
just
come up a couple times on the podcast, and the first time I heard it, I was like, well, that can't be real. But but the more
yeah,
I hear about it, the more it's definitely, and I've read about it in books now. So yeah, I'm very intrigued now, and
yeah, that's
I'm gonna
definitely what I
definitely give it
thought
a
too.
shot.
And there's no way that it helps like with misophonia. Like, it doesn't take, nothing I have done has ever taken away misophonia, but it has helped my body process the negative emotions that misophonia like embody, I guess, and helps me move through those emotions and feelings and whatever. And
Get
so
back to equilibrium. Yeah.
exactly. And then another thing I did try was EMDR. And I have mixed feelings about that. I was very intrigued because it sounded awesome. But the therapist and I we didn't vibe, I guess. Like, it was just very odd. And then she like forgot why I was there. And I had a dream about my dad chewing strawberries. And I told her, I was like, triggers are, like showing up in my dreams. And she was like, oh, triggers like a gunshot. And I just looked at her and I said, no, my dad
Oh
eating a
my God.
strawberry.
Yeah. Okay.
It was so funny to me. I was like, no, like in that moment, I just was like, you don't get it. Like, you
Yeah.
don't get it. And EMDR is deep trauma work. And if I don't feel comfortable with the person that I'm with, there's no way I'm going to get anywhere with this.
Right. Right.
And so I just like put that on the shelf. I might do it in the
It might be
future.
worth trying again with somebody who's
Exactly.
more
Exactly.
aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, no, my dad eating a strawberry. Like,
Yeah.
only we can say
Okay. Right.
that.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No, it's super interesting. And we're obviously a little bit more now. I feel like we can keep going, but maybe I'll
Yeah,
have to have you on for some kind of a part two at some point.
yeah, sure.
But for now, like, is there anything else you kind of want to talk about, especially maybe in terms of like what's helped you lately? I'm also curious about, how do you see the future? You're young and
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
you're nannying now. I don't know if you're thinking about what you want to do after you move out and whatnot, but that could be maybe a whole conversation in itself. But
Mhm.
if there's any like techniques that you want to mention, it'd be great to hear. But yeah, I'm also just kind of want to hear what you think about the future, especially after what you've gone through.
Yeah, well, I definitely could talk on and on for hours and hours about this. It's just, I love psychology and love people and just like how we are operating. And so, as I've grown up, I've realized how different I am from everybody else. And like, oh, you don't think like me. And so that makes me just like, I feel like a narcissist a lot because I'm so intrigued with like why I do the things I do. But it's
Yeah,
it's more in like a curiosity, like, why am I different? What is going on? So yeah, there's that. But I could literally go on and on. But breath work is another one that I've tried. Like the box breath, just four in, four hold, four out, four hold.
Yeah, I've
And
heard of
like if
that
you're
too.
being triggered, like, and if the only thing you have is yourself, you have no other tools, you always have your breath. And that doesn't mean it has to be perfect every time, but getting oxygen to your brain is helpful in general,
It's
let
important,
alone helping
yes.
children. So, like, I know it sounds silly, but it's just like, hello, we need it. Because a lot of the time I hold my breath, so that was a big thing, is like teaching myself how to breathe properly. um,
As part of the freeze response, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then something random is tracking my cycle. And so for any like woman with, or any bleeding woman with misophonia, like, please track your cycle, because that's when misophonia would get really bad for me, is in that like PMS time right before my period. And it was like really scary a lot of the times. Like, I would have panic attacks, I would freak out, I would
Yeah.
see visions and like think that something was attacking me. Like, it got really scary sometimes. And
Hmm.
so tracking that and then being able to be like, oh wow, like that person really just pissed me off. And then, or I'm feeling triggered, like, and then I'm like, oh, I'm about to start my period, and it just gives me grace. That's all. That really is all. And I think that's huge for us, because a lot of the time we're beating ourselves up for being angry when really it's just our bodies happening. That's
Yeah.
all.
Right. No, that's interesting. There was somebody that came on some not too long ago who definitely talked about how she feels it's strongly connected to hormonal changes, because it's kind of coincided with the misophonia is just coincided with at times of her life. She's a little bit older when
Yeah, I listened to
hormones
that
changed a
episode.
lot. Oh yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was really intrigued because I have always thought that it was connected to hormones. And then when I listened to her, I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Like, we had a very similar situation. And so, or like realizations, I guess. And so I thought that was interesting. But yeah, who knows like where and what and why it is correlated, but I see a huge correlation within my life that it's just like, duh, like it's just so clear that
Yeah,
it's connected. But then as far as the future, man, oh,
yeah. If you could
I,
sum it up in 4 words. No, just kidding.
oh my gosh, oh yeah, me in 4 words, right? Um, man, I'm a dreamer. I really am a dreamer. I think the world has a lot of potential right now.
Yeah, it could only get better, I hope.
We need to get better. We need to be more accessible and more conscious, more aware. I think a lot of our issues, I believe in my heart, have something to do with the greater good. And I also believe that as misophones, we have deep empathy. And so, whatever is going on in the world, I believe it is affecting us on a conscious or subconscious level. Um, because I feel like a huge empath, and the other misophones I've heard on this podcast and a few that I've talked to, we feel very deeply. And so when the world is hurting, so are we,
You
because
know
we
what? Yeah, sorry, go on.
understand
Yeah.
what that pain, we understand what the pain truly feels like. And especially when it's out of our control. So seeing fires and floods and all these terrible things happening, like, somewhere our body knows. We might not know and we might not have that experience, but our body knows.
Yeah, no, that's a great point on a macro level. But even I've been thinking recently a lot about that. How what are some advantages to misophonia, and whether the I'm sure you've heard the term HSP, the highly sensitive person. A lot of
Yeah,
people have come on. I've been thinking about like uh, how can that benefit us on a more of a even more on a selfish level, like in our careers, like can that make
totally.
us better managers or bosses? I think that's something we should I
Totally.
don't know, I don't just kind of celebrate in a way, like, or at least kind of highlight, hey, maybe we can
Yeah,
use our empathic abilities to kind of benefit the world, but also us personally, in our livelihoods that will, have a ripple effect on people around us.
exactly. And I truly believe that we could be some sort of superheroes. Like, I know that sounds hard to believe, but I feel like we are quite intelligent. We've just been suffering, and so
Hmm.
we don't know how to access it, a lot of us. But I genuinely feel like we are special humans because, again, I had never heard of misophonia or anyone with misophonia other than my 8th grade teacher, but that's besides the point, until I saw this podcast and to listen to you guys and be like, oh my gosh, we've all felt alone and we've all felt like the only one. And to me, that is weird. Or not weird, but like very interesting.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of people can, oh, I feel like I'm the only one. This is on another level, I feel like. Like, no one gets it until you get it. And so when we find each other, that's like beauty. And so I really do feel like we can, like, I'm not trying to start a cult or anything, but I really feel like we can band together and make this world a better place because we are more aware in a way that other people aren't.
No, you're right. That kind of that spark and connection that we feel when we find each other, if other people felt the same way
Yeah.
around each other, I think that's an energy that we want to promote. So,
Yeah.
but let's maybe end on that kind of positive
Yeah.
note
Great.
for now. Maybe we'll have other conversations in the future. But yeah, this was amazing. I had no problem letting it go over an hour because we covered a lot of amazing ground.
Yeah. There's a lot.
I
Thank
think
you.
people will
I
be taking
appreciate
notes,
it.
I'm sure. Yeah, of course. No, this is hugely beneficial for me too. Yeah, Makayla, yeah, thanks again. And
Well, thank you for everything that you do. Seriously, like, for this community, this is huge. We need it. Like, this has brought me to so much understanding of my own brain, and it's just amazing. So thank you because you are providing a service, an outlet, language to people who desperately need it. So thank you.
thank you, Makayla. It's amazing how similar we all are in our experiences and our thoughts about misophonia a little more philosophically. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this show. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. You can follow there, or Facebook. And I always forget Twitter at Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.